Taking longer than normal. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Edna White, your host of Keeping It Real on Purpose. And today I am blessed to have such a beautiful guest, which I'm really excited about because I told her before pre-show that I'm so glad she's here.
Yes,
So
hello.
welcome to the show. Yeah, I know. I'm so excited you're here. So we have Tanya
Half of
Hackney.
life is just showing up, right?
I know. That's what I like about it. And she's a former teacher, an award-winning author. She has homeschooled her 5 children aboard a sailing catamaran. Now, I love the word catamaran. I don't know what it is, but I can't wait to learn. And her saying is Take Two since 2008. She writes it for the Take Two Sailing blog, published Leaving the Safe Harbor in 2021, and balances the sailing adventures with caring for both her youngest children and elderly parents. How do you do it, Tanya?
By the grace of God and the skin of my teeth.
Yes. Oh, that's good. That's a good one. That's a good one.
By the seat of my pants. I don't know. I'm trying to think of all the like one day at a time, because there's no other way. If you tried to bite off the whole piece, you wouldn't be able to chew it. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's been a lot the last couple of years.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about yourself and, just tell us a little bit so we can get this ball rolling, because I'm ready to hear about this catamaran.
I'll start by telling you what a catamaran is. How about that?
Okay.
So most people would, if you have an image of sailboat in your mind, it would probably be a monohull, a single hulled ship with a mast and some sails. Mm-hmm. And a catamaran is like having 2 monohulls stuck together with a big cabin in the middle. So it gives you basically like double the space. It's a different style of sailboat, but it is a sailboat. It has a 68-foot mast. We are 48 feet long and 26 feet wide. And our entire life, work, homeschool, hobbies for 5 children and 2 adults was all contained in that space since 2008. And of course, we've launched a few kids now. So we're down to 2 crew members that are here full time besides my husband and me. But that little floating home has contained our life for 15, 16 years now.
Wow. What made you start to homeschool? What was your inspiration behind that?
So there were things that drove me away from public school, and there were things that drove me towards homeschool. So it wasn't all just, a negative reaction about school. I was a public school teacher, and I always use the analogy. It's like when you work in a restaurant, and if you've seen, like rats and cockroaches in the kitchen, then you're not going to eat in that restaurant.
Right.
So some of my public school experiences, I would say, I saw some of the negative side of public school. And when it came time to decide what I wanted to do for my own family, because I have the educational background and I knew I could work on the curriculum side, I knew that I could give my kids an individualized education. My husband and I had actually planned financially so that I could stay home with them when they were little. So something that many people don't realize is that you really start homeschooling your children from the moment that they're born. It isn't until they turn 5 that the system suddenly says that you are no longer qualified to educate your children, right? Like you teach them everything that they know up until the point where you have to teach them to read. You taught them to tie their shoes and to walk and to have table manners, everything. You taught them everything that they needed right up until, the system says, okay, you're no longer qualified, and you have to stick them on a school bus. Well, I kind of reject that. I basically ruined my kids because they were all reading early, and we were already doing so many of the activities that I knew how to lead and direct because I was a kindergarten teacher, that by the time my kids were 5 or 6 years old, they would have been very bored in kindergarten. So in some way, I shot myself in the foot. I was a little bit too good of a mother, because when it came time to send them to school, I was like, I don't think I can throw them, onto a school bus and into a classroom. So I decided to keep going. And at that point, my husband and I had already started talking about just a completely different lifestyle.
Right.
He was
that's really a big change.
He was able to do some remote work, which was pretty early. He's what you would call a digital nomad, although that term didn't That didn't
Love it.
exist back then. So in
Yeah.
about, in 2004, we left Atlanta. We had a little house in the suburbs. We had
Hmm.
3 children under the age of 3, which was already crazy. I had a house
Yep.
full of toddlers, and we moved to Florida.
Hmm.
We reconnected with grandparents that were here, so we had kind of a family support system. And we made a 5-year plan to get out of a house and onto a sailboat. And my husband had grown up sailing, so this was a natural transition for us. Although, it sounds crazy to people that you
Yeah.
would take, a pile of children and throw them into a sailboat and just sail away. But there is a whole community of people who do this. It
Oh,
wasn't
wow.
completely
Okay.
unheard of.
Yeah.
Uh, there
Well,
are
I
other
didn't hear of
families.
it, and it's the first of
Right,
hearing it.
right.
Oh,
It's like a
wow. It's a whole
whole
community.
world that
Wow.
exists. We meet up with friends in different locations during hurricane season. Um, Boats kind of stack up in different hurricane holes, like
Yeah. Like
Grenada.
RVs. I would think like
Yes, it's a
RVs, right?
lot like
Okay.
RVing.
Okay.
So
Yep.
during hurricane season, you might meet up in Grenada or Panama or Rio Dulce, Guatemala. Like if you're traveling in the Caribbean, and you'll
Right.
you'll meet up with a bunch of other families doing this, and the kids will all hang out and go do stuff together. And
Gotcha.
so we weren't really like lonely, or we weren't the crazy
Hmm.
explorers that were off doing it by ourselves. So
Okay.
basically, that's what we did. We ditched everything. We took our kids with us, and we traveled full time for about 10 years. And then we
Oh,
came back when
wow.
the
Wow.
oldest 3 kids were in high school.
Right.
And we still travel, but we just have kind of picked a home base where they
Uh-huh.
could, you know, teenagers need friends, they need jobs
Oh,
and
yeah. They
cars and
do. They do. They
social
do.
structures, and kind of
Yeah.
a way to get out the door. So we gave
Hmm.
a stable platform for launching. And that's kind
Okay.
of where we are now. And now we're
Right.
also helping with aging parents. So we're kind of
Okay.
stationary, but we do regular travel. We went to the Bahamas last year with our 2
Yeah.
teenagers and 2 teenage cousins. 2 of my brother's
Okay.
kids came with us. So we're still
Okay.
traveling whenever we can.
Okay. What specific challenges have you faced in, transitioning into, homeschooling, on the boat, on a sailboat, as it were?
Yeah, well, I mean, as you can imagine, we experienced pretty intense shrinking pains, going from the 2,000-foot square house to,
Yeah.
the I don't know, it's less than 1,000 square feet. We
Yeah.
shrunk significantly, and everybody's literally in close quarters. You hear people say
Right.
that phrase, like it's an idiom, but it's close quarters.
Yeah.
Everybody has to share
Yeah.
their space.
Yeah.
Probably the hardest part was just the intensity of the experience. You can't really get away. Nobody's getting up to go to school. If your kids have some kind of argument in the morning, you can't say,
Hmm.
we'll talk about this when you get home from school. Y'all get on the school bus and go. It's You have to deal with everything, every
Right.
emotional problem, every personality clash. You have to
Right.
deal with it. You can't just say, we'll talk about this later. So
Yeah.
sometimes school gets put on the back burner while you're dealing with a family. You might have a family meeting instead of having math and
Yeah.
science that morning. And then you do the math and science afterward.
Right. It's intense, conflict resolution.
Yes, constant. It's constant conflict
Oh, that's really
resolution.
good. And
Then
that's a
there's
great that's not a concept, but a great part of life that we all need, you know?
Yeah, tools. You have to have the tools. If you do not
Absolutely.
develop tools for it, you'll be miserable. I mean, we've
Uh-huh.
definitely met lots of people for whom it was kind of a make or break situation, and
Right.
the boat is tough. It's tough. Things are breaking, things are moving. It's not
Mhm.
just a house, it's also a vehicle. So sometimes
Right.
you're in really bad weather, and so you're
Right.
also dealing with personal problems while you're dealing with some kind of, actual crisis.
Environmental thing
And you
going
get to
on.
find out what you're made of, like you're tested.
Absolutely.
It's a testing environment.
Yeah. And the second thing would be everything's minimal. Like, I'm thinking about the teenagers, maybe not that many outfits, you know what I'm saying?
Right? Right, but, they don't go to school, so they probably aren't
Mhm.
don't feel that same kind of social pressure.
Right,
Really,
right.
what they needed was a lot of swimsuits.
Okay, so it was really teaching minimalism as it is,
Yeah. I
And
mean,
do they carry that over now? Do they do that now in their own lives? Be like very minimal, everything's, or do they go, lavish living?
yeah, no, it's interesting to watch how they've turned into adults. So my oldest 3 are
Okay.
now, Let's see, my oldest was 7 when we moved aboard the boat, and he is
Okay.
now 23. And my baby at the time, when we moved aboard, is now 17. And then
Oh,
we had a
wow.
baby while we
Okay.
lived aboard, and she is 13. So everybody is teenager or older. The 23-year-old and the 17-year-old are getting ready to embark on a hiking trip. And they are headed on the Florida Trail. They're going to hike about 1,000 miles
Okay.
with a backpack. And so when you talk about minimal,
Oof.
they are taking, and they're weighing everything. So I,
Yeah.
was trying to help pack snacks for them. I'm trying to, at Christmas time, I was trying to plan things. What can I send with these boys on this big trip that they're taking? And they were like, Mom, please don't send us anything. We're weighing everything. They have everything weighed down to the ounce because they have to carry everything on their back
Yeah.
for the next
Right.
2 months. And so, and obviously they have to reprovision on the trip. But I would like to think that our adventure lifestyle and the ability to just take the bare minimum kind of led to them being comfortable with that kind of an adventure. I'm really excited to see what happens, and I hope they survive it, because this trip looks crazy to me. Like, I'm already kind of an adventurer, but
Right.
this is a whole new level. And then I have a
It
daughter who's in the
is.
Coast Guard, and she also,
Okay.
has chosen an adventurous path, and she's getting ready to move, and she realized all of her stuff fits in one truck.
Oh,
She's
wow.
got some clothes, she's got a bed, she's got books, and that's all she needs.
Wow. And I love the fact that, the adventure is put in the forefront, and, learning how to live with what you necessarily need is so important in this society that we're living in now. How are you moving forward? Are you making this an entrepreneurial journey, to bring that homeschooling, that sailing homeschooling, to entrepreneurship? What are you doing with that?
I have not really figured out how to monetize it. I
Okay.
tend to give everything away for free. To be honest with you, I end
Okay.
up
Okay.
basically doing free consulting. So when
Gotcha.
people,
Gotcha.
people find me because I wrote this book. So, I
Right.
mean, the way I guess I monetized it or turned it entrepreneurial is by
Right.
writing about it. And so people buy
Hmm.
my book, and then they'll contact me and say, I read your book. I'm really interested in doing this. What would be the first steps? And I'll say,
Right. Right.
I'll hop on a phone call with you. We'll talk for 30 minutes, and I'll, you know, talk you through your fears. And so
Right.
I do that. And I could turn that into a consulting business if I wanted
Right.
to. But at this point, I don't need the income stream personally, because I'm busy
That's okay. I
caretaking.
just wanted to know. I just wanted to
Yeah.
know.
No, that doesn't mean all of your listeners should call me and get a free phone call. Don't
Okay.
call me. You can send me an
Tell
email
them
or
now. Tell
a
them
message.
now. Tell
Yeah.
them now. Okay.
Buy my book. I would say buy my book, but no, I feel I'm struggling to balance it all, honestly.
Okay.
Like, on the
Right.
one hand, when you're caretaking, sometimes it's like days where nobody needs you, and you feel like when you have teenagers and you're homeschooling, they're doing a lot of
Yeah.
their work independently at this point. I feel a little bit useless some days, and I'm
Right.
like, well, I
Right.
can always clean something or cook something, or work on my book.
Right.
And then my mom will call, and she needs, a trip to the
Right.
doctor,
Right.
or and then suddenly I'm busy and I'm running around all the time, and I have no time to write, or like
Yeah.
the kids aren't getting the homeschooling help that they need. It's kind of hit and miss right now. It's definitely hills and valleys.
Right.
Um, I'm in a totally new place, physically and spiritually and emotionally,
Yeah.
and it's been
I bet.
a couple of years of hard testing. There've been a lot of deaths in our family and friend
Hmm. Hmm.
group, and I'm kind of in a different storm. It's not a storm at sea; it's just a storm of life,
Yeah.
and I feel like I'm being grown and stretched.
Yeah. And I can tell you, just listening to you, um, I was going to say empty nest syndrome, but it's empty boat syndrome. You didn't get to, fully embrace that, and, kind of move forward until you had to take on, caring for elderly parents, right? How
Yeah,
do you?
they call this the sandwich generation.
Yes,
I'm,
yes.
Gen
How
X.
are you processing that?
Yeah,
How are you
born in the mid
really? How,
70s. Yeah, and my parents are sort of baby boomer generation, and then my
yeah,
kids,
yeah,
are like Gen Z or whatever. And we're still caring for kids at home, and now our
right.
parents need help, and so we get
Yeah,
sandwiched. And I know a lot of women my age, especially if you're the oldest daughter in your family, you kind of, the responsibility falls on you for caring for your parents. In my
Yeah.
family, it's been very great. Like my brother did a lot of the caregiving for my mom over the last 20 years since my parents divorced. So we've shared that responsibility. The brunt of the physical work really fell on him. So in the last couple of years, since we came back to the United States and since we moved the boat so we could be closer to family,
Right.
I now do some of the hands-on caregiving. And I don't think I had any clue, what my brother had been going through. And now I
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and I have friends who, I have a friend whose mom has dementia and she's
Yeah.
living with this friend of mine. And, she's like my prayer partner. So when
Yeah.
I'm having a rough day, I call her and I pray for her. And or the other way around, she prays for me. And when she's having a
Yeah.
rough day, she
Yeah.
calls me and I pray for her. And we have a lot of sympathy for each other in this kind of tough season of life where your kids are growing up and going away.
Yeah.
You did your job because they don't need you anymore.
Right.
I
That's
mean, they
true.
don't need you to
That's
be as
true.
hands-on. Of course, they still need you, and we
Yeah.
have good
They do.
relationships. And
Yeah.
but in a way, you're grieving the loss of their childhood.
Right.
Something has changed, and at the
Right.
same time, you're probably going through some crazy hormone change. I know I am. I'm, 50. I've
All of
got
this at the same damn time.
perimenopause, right? I have a 13-year-old. So
Yes.
she's just beginning her womanly journey and I'm 50 and I'm just ending that womanly journey. And when my son goes on this hiking trip and it's just the three of us, me, my daughter, and my husband, my poor husband, those two women,
Yeah.
about once a month, he's going to have to go hide in his man
Yeah.
cave.
So how has living adventurously on this catamaran, I love the word, I really do, it just rolls off my tongue really well. How does living adventurously shape your mindset for the challenges you are now in?
Oh, that is such a wonderful and thoughtful question.
Oh,
In some ways, I feel less prepared because I had this idea
okay.
that, I had kind of a dysfunctional childhood. And I thought,
Gotcha.
if I buy this boat, it's like a magic carpet and I can fly
Oh,
away
that's
from
good.
all of these problems and I can go on
That's
these
good.
adventures and build this whole family that has none of the, like unpleasant parts of my own childhood. Now, you'll notice right away that this is kind of a running away mentality. It's a coping mechanism, and it doesn't really work. I mean,
Right.
at the end of the day, they say when you go away, you wake up
Yes.
in the morning and you're there. You can't run away from your problems. Your problems come with you. Your childhood comes with you. Your trauma comes with you. You still have to deal with it. And as you parent your children and you start hearing things come out of your mouth and you realize those are the patterns, those are the words you heard as a child. And without some deep thinking and some deep healing, you're just going to repeat the pattern. And so I think traveling allowed us to get away from that and to really forge the kind of family that we wanted to forge. But I would be foolish to say that we were able to completely, just by physically sailing away, that we were able to break with the past and start something new.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
of course we have baggage. So God pulled me up short and has shown me all the ways that I need to grow and heal. And then he called me to come back. So you can sail away. Of course you can sail away. You can go on any kind of adventure. You can run really far.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, when he said, honor your father and mother, that's really what I heard clearly. When my brother wanted some help with my mom and my husband's stepmom died and then his dad was alone and needed some help. Suddenly I'm in a totally different life stage. And I realized that God was calling me back to be still for a little while.
Yeah.
And nothing is harder for someone who likes
And
to
that's a season. That's a season.
run away, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. It's a season of stillness and self-reflection.
Yep.
And it requires a lot of forgiveness because you have to
Absolutely.
accept that you're in a new stage. And the people that I'm helping, like my parents, are different now than they were when I was a kid. They're just different people. And I'm a different person.
Absolutely. How do you leverage what you've learned with helping your parents now?
Well, I think one of the benefits of the way that we lived was that we did not place a lot of significance on physical stuff.
Gotcha.
And so we knew that what makes you happy in life is good
Mm-hmm.
relationships. And that was what we tried to pass on to our children. It's not that you don't need stuff. Everybody needs an income. You need a place to live. You need clothes on your
Right.
back. You need some stuff. But if you're counting on that stuff to make you happy, then you're going to end up feeling empty inside. And so we tried to teach
Right.
our children that relationships are what make you happy in life. And so in that way, because we had always prioritized people over stuff, that has made it really easy to make this transition because I know what's really important.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing like, holding the hand of someone who's dying teaches you what's really important in life and how
That's
short
good.
time is and how precious love
That's good.
is. And I mean, really the lesson from the last few years, not just from the traveling where we were making, all these
Yeah.
wonderful memories with our family. It's just really how precious time is and how limited it is and what's really, really important.
Yeah, that's great.
And I think the
Look.
end goal would be to live
Mhm.
without regret, to
Oh,
live
yeah,
in such
that's
a way
great. Yeah.
that when you're
The
on your
adventure does that.
deathbed,
Yeah, that's good.
yeah,
Yeah,
when
yeah,
you're
that's
on your
good.
deathbed, you're not going to say, I wish I had done this. I wish I had done that. And when I'm dealing with either frustrating teenagers or frustrating parents, or even just being
Mm-hmm.
frustrated with my own self, I try and do things in such a way that I will not look back with regret. I want to
Gotcha.
say I did the best I could with what I had. I cared for my parents the best way that I knew how. I cared for my children the best way that I knew how. I cared for myself the best way that I knew how. And when I
Awesome.
failed, I asked forgiveness. I made amends.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to have some humility
Right.
and do better.
Yeah, that's
I think
great.
those are the ways that you can
Oh, absolutely.
avoid regret.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now from your story, out of all that you've learned, can you give our audience one thing that could help them grow, soulishly, in their soul?
The commitment to a morning quiet time has been
Mm,
probably the single most transforming and life-sustaining practice that I have,
that's good.
is to get up in the morning. The first thing I do is think of 3 things that I'm thankful for,
Yeah.
especially if I feel grumpy, because it's easy to find things to be thankful for when everything's
Yes.
wonderful.
Yes.
But to really think about that, what am I great? And sometimes it's just, hey, I woke up on the right side of the dirt. Praise God,
Mm-hmm.
I'm still
Mm-hmm.
here. Um, but to start with gratitude, to read, I read something devotional every single morning, whether it's the
Gotcha.
Bible or some kind of self-help or theology book, some
Yeah.
kind of book that is going to enrich myself and my mind and stretch and grow me. So
Yeah.
some kind of contemplative reading. I keep a journal. I write down my prayer requests. And one of the reasons why I do that is because I can go back and look at things that I prayed about years and years ago, or even just months ago, and see the ways that those answers have played out. It really helps
Mm-hmm.
me grow my faith. Anytime I'm dealing with something really difficult, it helps when I wrestle it out with God first, rather
Yes.
than, dumping on my family, which is the temptation when you all live in a tiny little space, is to just dump on each other.
Yes.
Probably my husband appreciates when I talk to God first before I come to him with my problems. So I would say that's something you can do no matter where you are, whether you
Yeah.
have a job, whether you have, you're a stay-at-home mom, whether you have your own
That's
business, whether
such
you,
good self-care.
yeah.
Yeah.
And if you have to get up a little bit earlier to make that happen, to get a little bit of exercise in, a little bit of prayer time in, it's worth it.
It
It's worth
is.
it.
It's so very worth it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it straight from somebody other than me. Take out some morning time. Tanya, love you, love you, love you, because you said it.
Yes. I
Take
must be
out some
preaching to the
morning
choir.
time. That's so important. Well, this is the end of our show. We want to thank you guys for being here today. And I just love the fact that Tanya Hackney is here with us today, who's a former teacher and award-winning author of Take Two. Make sure you get her book. And this is Edna White and my esteemed guest, Tanya, saying goodbye for now.